History is written by the victors, but what happens when the victors try to erase an entire war? A war so brutal, so relentless that even the Romans, the greatest conquerors of the ancient world, tried to wipe it from existence. For centuries, the Druids were seen as nothing more than mystical priests. But ancient maps, lost records, and new archaeological discoveries tell a different story. The Druids were not just religious leaders, they were warriors, revolutionaries, and the last line of defense against an empire that sought to crush Britain's spirit. But why would Rome, a civilization that glorified its victories, want to erase this war from history? What did the Druids know? What made them so dangerous? And did the British resistance last far longer than history claims? This is Britain's lost war against the Druids, forgotten, hidden, and only now being uncovered. For 2,000 years, we've been told the Romans conquered Britain swiftly. That resistance collapsed, the Druids vanished, and history moved on. But what if that isn't true? What if the greatest battle for Britain wasn't recorded, but erased? Ancient maps, long hidden in archives, show something extraordinary. Evidence of battles that history never recorded. Forts built for wars that never happened. Archaeologists have uncovered Roman camps and battlefields that don't appear in official records. Why? Because this wasn't just a war. It was an extermination campaign against an entire way of life. The Druids were more than priests. They were the spiritual, intellectual, and political leaders of Britain. They held knowledge that stretched back centuries, knowledge that Rome saw as a direct threat. They united tribes, they controlled sacred sites, and they led revolts against foreign rule. Rome could not allow them to exist. This war wasn't about conquest. It was about erasing an entire civilization. Their temples were destroyed, their forests burned, their people massacred. But even after their supposed destruction, Rome's records show something strange. Fortresses built decades later in areas where the Druids were gone. If the Druids were wiped out, why did Rome still fear them? Could they have survived, waging a hidden war that history never recorded? Britain's war against Rome wasn't just fought with swords. It was fought with secrets, lost knowledge, and the power of a people who refused to be erased. And now, for the first time, we have the evidence to prove it. This is the lost war of the Druids. The war that should have changed history but was buried instead. For centuries, we've been told that Rome's invasion of Britain was swift and decisive, that the tribes fell, the Druids disappeared, and Roman rule was unchallenged. But what if that was a lie? Ancient maps, hidden for centuries, reveal something extraordinary. Battle sites that don't match recorded history. Roman forts in places where no official wars were fought. Entire campaigns missing from historical records. This isn't just a gap in history. It's a war that was deliberately erased. Rome recorded its victories with pride. They built triumphal arches, minted coins, and inscribed their conquests in stone. But their campaign against the Druids? Barely mentioned. Why? The answer lies in a war fought in the shadows, a war Britain was never supposed to remember. In recent years, new archaeological evidence has emerged, evidence that forces us to rethink everything we know about the Roman conquest of Britain. First, newly discovered forts suggest Britain's war against Rome lasted far longer. Roman records claim that by 61 CE, after the attack on the island of Mona, the Druids were wiped out. But archaeologists have uncovered fortifications and military roads built long after that date, in areas where the Druids were supposedly gone. A newly discovered Roman fortress in Semlin Bay, Wales, built around 80 CE, suggests that Rome was still fighting pockets of resistance 2 decades after their victory. In Scotland, another Roman fort, dated nearly 40 years after the supposed end of the Druidic threat, suggests an ongoing war that was never recorded in history books. If the Druids were truly destroyed, why was Rome still fortifying these lands decades later? Second, the missing maps. Why do some battle records stop abruptly? In the Vatican archives, historians discovered ancient maps showing Roman troop movements that don't match official records. These maps suggest entire legions were deployed in northern and western Britain, but no official battles were recorded in those locations. Some of these routes lead to sacred Druidic sites that Rome claimed were already destroyed. Were they hunting down the last Druids? Did the resistance continue for decades, hidden from history? One document found in the archives of a medieval monastery mentions a Roman campaign against the ghosts of Britannia, a possible reference to Druidic warriors who fought long after their civilization was supposedly wiped out. Why did these wars disappear from history? Did the Romans suffer defeats they refused to admit? Or was there something about the Druids that Rome feared more than battle? If this was just about conquest, why cover it up? What was the real purpose of Rome's war against the Druids? Could the Druids have waged a hidden war that lasted for decades? Were they truly wiped out, or did their knowledge survive? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Infinitia Verity for more mind-blowing historical discoveries. Rome conquered countless civilizations: Egypt, Carthage, Gaul. But no enemy haunted them like the Druids of Britain. They were not just warriors. They were something more, something Rome could not understand, something they feared so much they tried to erase all traces of them from history. Who were the Druids, and what knowledge did they possess that made them such a threat? The Romans could handle armies, they could defeat kings. But the Druids, they fought with something far more dangerous: secrets, knowledge, and a power that Rome itself could not control. Two astonishing facts that explain Rome's fear. First, the Druids were more advanced than Rome in science and astronomy. The Druids had no written records, but that didn't mean they were primitive. They built stone observatories, tracked the stars with astonishing accuracy, and predicted eclipses, planetary alignments, and seasonal cycles. They constructed monuments like Stonehenge, which aligned perfectly with solstices and lunar events, a feat of engineering that still baffles scientists today. Roman writers, including Julius Caesar himself, admitted that Druidic knowledge in astronomy and natural sciences rivaled anything known in Rome. They believed the Druids had secret knowledge of the universe, knowledge Rome wanted to control or destroy. Could the Druids have possessed an advanced understanding of the natural world that was lost when they were wiped out? Second, the Romans claimed Druids performed human sacrifices. Was this propaganda? One of the most chilling claims about the Druids came from the Romans themselves. They wrote that Druids practiced human sacrifice, burning prisoners alive in massive wicker men as offerings to their gods. But here's the problem. There is no archaeological evidence of large-scale human sacrifice in Druidic culture. Roman writers, including Strabo and Tacitus, described terrifying rituals, but many historians believe these were exaggerations or outright fabrications used to justify Rome's genocide of the Druids. Why would Rome need to fabricate such stories? Because the Druids weren't just rebels, they were leaders. They united tribes. They resisted Roman rule not just with weapons, but with knowledge, alliances, and a belief system that inspired people to fight against foreign occupation. Was the image of Druids as bloodthirsty priests a Roman lie? And if so, what was the real reason Rome feared them so much? The Romans waged wars to conquer land, but their war against the Druids was different. This was not just a conquest, it was a campaign to erase an entire civilization. What did the Druids know that made them so dangerous? Could their knowledge have survived, hidden away for centuries? What do you think? Were the Druids truly a threat to Rome, or were they victims of one of history's greatest cover-ups? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Infinitia Verity for more lost history and forgotten wars. For centuries, historians believed the Roman conquest of Britain was swift and absolute. That the Druids were wiped out, their resistance crushed. But newly discovered ancient maps, hidden military records, and unexplained archaeological finds tell a different story. Entire battles are missing from history. Roman fortifications stand in places where no recorded war took place. Maps recovered from Vatican archives and medieval monasteries show legions deployed to locations that Rome never admitted to fighting in. If the Druids were truly destroyed, why does the evidence suggest Britain's war against Rome lasted far longer than we were told? Two astonishing discoveries that rewrite history. First, newly discovered Roman forts suggest the war continued for decades. Roman records claim that by 61 CE, after the attack on the island of Mona, the Druids were completely eliminated, but recent excavations in Wales and Scotland tell a different story. At Semlin Bay in Wales, archaeologists have uncovered a previously unknown Roman military fortress, built around 80 CE. If Rome had already won, why were they still fortifying these lands nearly 2 decades later? Further north, in Perthshire, Scotland, another Roman fortress was discovered, dated nearly 40 years after the supposed end of the Druidic threat. It suggests that Druidic resistance may have continued long after history tells us it ended. Were these strongholds built to suppress a surviving Druidic rebellion? If so, why were these wars never recorded in Roman history? Second, the Vatican's hidden maps show battles that were never recorded. For centuries, religious archives across Europe have held forgotten Roman documents, maps that never made it into mainstream history books. Some of these, discovered in the Vatican archives, show the deployment of entire Roman legions into western and northern Britain, to locations with no official battles recorded. One document, recovered from an ancient monastery in Ireland, mentions a Roman campaign against the ghosts of Britannia. Could this be a reference to Druidic warriors who continued fighting long after their civilization was supposedly erased? If the Druids were truly defeated, why did Rome still fear them? Why was a secret war still being fought in places that history never recorded? Britain's war against Rome didn't end in 61 CE. The Druids may have lost their temples, their sacred groves, and their lands, but they may have continued their fight in the shadows. A war that Rome could not afford to acknowledge. Did the Druids survive? Did their knowledge live on in secret beyond the reach of Rome? Or were they finally hunted down, their final battles lost to time? Could the lost maps prove that the Druids waged a hidden war? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Infinitia Verity for more mind-blowing historical discoveries. History remembers many last stands: Thermopylae, Masada, the Alamo. But one of the most brutal, most decisive, and most mysterious was the final battle of the Druids, a battle so extreme that it led to the near erasure of an entire civilization. In 61 CE, after years of resistance, the Druids and their allies made their final stand on the island of Mona, modern-day Anglesey. What followed was not just a battle, it was an extermination. What happened in this last stand? And why did Rome go to such lengths to erase all traces of the Druids from history? Two astonishing facts about the final massacre. First, Tacitus's chilling account of the massacre on Mona. The only detailed Roman account of this battle comes from the historian Tacitus, who described a scene unlike any other in Roman warfare. As the Roman legions crossed the Menai Strait, they saw a sight that shook even their hardened soldiers. On the shore stood Druidic priests, dressed in black robes, raising their hands to the sky, chanting curses. Behind them, women in wild clothing ran among the warriors, screaming like banshees, their hair unbound. Even the Roman soldiers hesitated. These men had fought in Gaul, against Germanic tribes, in brutal battles across the empire. But they had never seen anything like this. Then the order was given. The Romans attacked. The Druids and their warriors fought, but they were outnumbered. The Romans cut them down, then turned their attention to the sacred groves, the heart of Druidic knowledge. The orders were clear: burn everything, leave no trace of their culture. The groves were set ablaze, ritual sites destroyed, priests executed. Rome didn't just want to conquer the Druids, they wanted to erase them. Second, why was this battle covered up? Most Roman victories were celebrated with triumphal parades, coins, and monuments. But the destruction of the Druids? Almost no records remain. There are no Roman inscriptions boasting about this campaign, no triumphal arches dedicated to the victory. The only written mention comes from Tacitus, and even his account is missing details. Why? Some historians believe this battle was so brutal, so methodical in its extermination, that Rome chose to bury it. Others suggest something even stranger, that the Druids may not have been completely defeated, that some may have survived, carrying their knowledge into hiding, waiting for the right time to re-emerge. If the Druids were truly gone, why did Roman emperors continue banning Druidic practices for centuries after this battle? Was Rome afraid that the Druids were not truly gone, that their knowledge still remained, hidden, waiting? The final battle on Mona was meant to be the end of the Druids, but was it really? Could their secrets, their influence, have survived long after the flames died down? What do you think? Was this truly the end, or did the Druids continue their fight in the shadows? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Infinitia Verity for more mind-blowing historical discoveries. History tells us the Druids were wiped out in 61 CE, that their temples burned, their leaders were executed, and their influence was erased. But is that true? Or did the Druids survive in secret, their knowledge hidden, waiting for the right time to return? There is no record of surviving Druids forming another army. But what if their war was never about weapons? What if their battle was about something far more dangerous, ideas, forbidden knowledge, and a legacy that still echoes today? Could the Druids have continued their influence in secret, forming the foundations of powerful organizations that would shape history long after Rome's fall? Two astonishing theories that suggest the Druids survived. First, the Freemasons, the Celts, and the hidden Druidic influence. Centuries after the Romans claimed to have wiped out the Druids, symbols and teachings eerily similar to theirs began appearing in secret societies across Europe. The Freemasons, one of the most mysterious and powerful organizations in history, use rituals, astronomical knowledge, and sacred geometry, concepts that mirror ancient Druidic practices. Many early Masonic lodges even referred to Druidic teachings in their ceremonies. In Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, lands Rome never fully conquered, legends speak of wise men, keepers of hidden knowledge, who carried on ancient traditions long after the Druids were gone. If the Druids were truly erased, how did their ideas live on? Did their teachings survive, hidden within secret brotherhoods that continued their influence for centuries? Second, Rome's continued fear. Why did Druidic bans last for centuries? If the Druids were destroyed in 61 CE, why did Roman emperors continue banning Druidic practices for over 300 years? As late as the 4th century CE, during the reign of Emperor Constantius II, laws were still being written banning Druidic rituals. This suggests that Druidism didn't vanish, it simply went underground. Even the Catholic Church, centuries later, continued outlawing pagan practices that bore striking similarities to Druidic traditions. Were they still afraid of something that had supposedly died out long ago? Did the Druids vanish, or did they evolve, passing their knowledge down in secret, shaping history from behind the scenes? The Romans thought they had erased the Druids, but maybe the Druids understood something Rome never did, that real power isn't in armies or empires. Real power is in knowledge, in ideas, in what is remembered long after conquerors are gone. Could the Druids have left behind something even greater than a kingdom? A legacy that survived in secret, waiting to be uncovered? What do you think? Did the Druids truly vanish, or did they live on in hidden societies? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Infinitia Verity for more mind-blowing historical discoveries.